can do yourself. Walter Assi is the president of Renovco, which is a Montreal-based company that specializes in restoration services after disasters, and he joins us in studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What is the first thing that you recommend that people do when they're going into their flooded home for the first time?
Protection equipment is extremely important. We're seeing a lot lately that people are coming into their homes without any protection, going down to their basements, no masks, no gloves, and not realizing that, there's some nasty stuff that happened over the last few days of the flooding. Mold is one of the issues that we worry about, but so is bacteria and viruses.
And that's just is it in the air? Is it contact when you touch it? So what do you have to be concerned about?
It's actually both. So it's volatile, so it actually aerosolizes easily. So we have particulate that goes in the air. The other thing is when we touch any contaminated furniture, which is most of the case what we're seeing people doing is trying to save their contents, so they handle furniture that is moldy and they put, and they don't wash their hands or they forget, and that's when people can potentially get sick. So it's not just really any type of mask, for example, like I brought with me here.
Yeah, you brought one in here.
That's right.
So this is not just one of those like a dust mask or paper mask that you would just pick up.
100%.
Right.
So this is a P100. It's a particulate mask, and it's really made to filter down particulate. We're talking about microscopic fungi, so please keep this in mind. It needs to be a very sophisticated, good quality filter. In some cases, we even have to go to upgrade to P120 when you have a sewer backup. So it's a bit more sophisticated type of filtration.
Can you hold it up
system.
first here so we can see? So this is they have filters on the side. So those are replaceable or what?
Yeah, that's correct. Those are replaceable filters, and it's important that when you are actually putting it in, to put it in properly. So that there have to be some type of a fit test. So it cannot be like very loose on your mouth and what have you.
Okay, so you have to make sure that so it's got straps on the side. If you pull them, you have to make sure that it fits over the top of your head.
That's correct, yes.
And that it seems like there's almost like a seal that would be caused with that?
Well, yeah, exactly. You have to feel like there's some type of suction.
Right.
So no air can get through the sides.
And so this protects against what, you said?
Well, this is microscopic fungi, so we're talking about most of the mold spores. Because don't forget, most spores are below 5 microns in size most of the time. So our respiratory system is not made to filter them down. So when we breathe them, we actually breathe them and goes straight to our lungs. And this will prevent this from happening.
So people are trying to get into their basements, do a lot of this work themselves. We've seen pictures of people pulling out, drywall, pulling out floors even. What should people be trying to handle on their own, or what can people handle on their own, and what should be left to a professional in your view?
So in a major disaster, this is not a DIY. So this is not a do-it-yourself type of a project. Simply because when we do this type of work, we have to establish containment zones. We have to put negative pressure machines, air purifiers. So it's a bit more sophisticated than, let's rip out the gyprock. When you do that, you're just creating yourself a false sense of security. Because the particulate just goes in the air and aerosolizes everywhere and spreads to unaffected areas in the house. So you think you took out all the wet material, but in essence what you did is you just disturbed the spores and put them everywhere in the house. That's why there is a protocol to follow. We usually follow what you call the IICRC protocol, which tells us exactly the steps we need to take between the negative air machines, between the HEPA vacuuming, the disinfection, and so on and so forth. Even when you apply disinfectant, there's a dwell time as well. So it's not to be taken lightly at all.
I want to get to the disinfecting in a moment. What are some of the things that people should be doing first or can do first when they go into their homes?
So if your electricity has been shut off, you have to call a certified electrician to put it back on. If it hasn't been shut off, you also would have to call a certified electrician, especially if you had 3-4 feet of water in your basement. Gas technician as well. So anything that is really mechanical, call a professional and try to do it yourself, because it's really dangerous and it could, cause a lot of other problems as well. The second thing is, calling a professional does not cost anything. Just call a professional, let them assess the situation with you. There are things you could maybe, if you have the proper protection, you want to save some equipment, some content, as long as you have gloves on, Tyvek suits, masks, safety goggles, and as well as safety boots. Because don't forget, we were coming into basements, we have debris coming from the river, 2x4s,
You could be
nails.
stepping on anything.
100%.
Right.
We just were in the basement this week, and 3 feet of like mud, and I don't know what was in there, right? So people were just walking with flip-flops, and this is, you know, so we have to be really, really careful with these things and not to take it lightly at all.
The first thing that people would be dealing with is perhaps still some water, still a lot of moisture in there. How do you dry things out?
Okay, well, technically speaking, from a professional standpoint, we come in, we establish, like I said, we establish containment zones. We have professional grade dehumidifiers, drying equipment. The drying equipment most of the time are, like I've seen some people renting, let's say, for example, blowers. Which is something we do at the end of the disinfection process, and these people were doing it at the beginning. Now, what that does is we just spread the air, the spores everywhere. So we establish containment zones, negative air pressure. We get rid of all the wet materials, dispose of it, disinfect. Then we establish high-grade dehumidifiers as well as blowers to mechanically dry all the structural elements in the house.
How do you know if your drywall, if your floors, if things like that have to go? How can you tell if they've been, you know, if sections have been damaged?
Well, if you are just a straight consumer, it's just really by looking at them. But from our standpoint, we have thermal imaging cameras, we have moisture counters, so we know, like, we go some cases, clients tell us we have like 6-7 inches of water in our basement. When we put our machines on the wall, it's actually 3 or 4 feet because the humidity levels go up with time. So we know that, okay, 8 inches is not gonna cut it, and we have to go much higher in cases like this. So yeah, that's very important that you know how high the humidity went, and this is all going to be factored in and how fast you have actually intervened. So if the flood just happened and you had 2 inches of water, more likely 3, 4, 5 inches cutting the gyprock is going to cut it. But in cases where it's been sitting there for days, then the humidity levels have likely went up higher in the wall and have to be dealt with.
What about the contents? I think a lot of people will have things in their basement that they're trying to salvage. When it comes to things like furniture, for example, is that it's all a write-off? Or
so 99 of the cases it is a write-off. Okay, the only time where we might be able to salvage something is if we can actually disinfect the surface and the surface is not porous.
So if it's metal, for example?
Well, metal, the only problem you deal with afterwards would be rust in certain cases. But plastic, anything that is plastic, we're more likely to save. In most cases, it will cost you cheaper to discard it than to actually try to save it and to take the chance with it as well. What you really should prevent doing, by the way, is taking out those contents and trying to take them to unaffected areas in the house to inspect them. So taking them from the basement, bringing them to the first floor, that's a common mistake that is done, and that's a very, very bad thing you're doing.
So you should disinfect them on the spot, or you should take them outside?
Take them outside, because on the spot, obviously, everything around it is contaminated. So take them outside, disinfect them. Once you're sure that they're dried and disinfected, bring them back in.
And what can you use to disinfect? Are we talking about bleach, or what
Absolutely not. So we shouldn't really... There's a misconception about bleach and Javel and whatever. This is not the right way to go at all. There are specific biocides you could use. Mold control, Foster is another product. Read the label, because they do have a dwell time, and there are some that needs to be diluted. Others, they don't have to be diluted. There are some that have to be taken out afterwards, damp cleaned. So please read the label when using them and have a mask on, because they're not fun to breathe for a long period of time either.
A lot of people are considering what they can do if their home is in a flood zone to try to protect it. Situation right now, let us know what you're going through, 514-566-9066. And city officials, of course, urging residents to be careful when they're going back into their home for the first time, to get their building instructed before going in, and to call 311 or